He was standing on my porch like he'd been there 100 times before. He hadn't. I stood at my front door, hands still on the knob, and just looked at him. My dad, a man I hadn't seen in almost 4 years. No call, no text, no warning. Just standing there in a blue jacket, smiling like we talked last Tuesday. "Hey, sweetheart," he said, "just wanted to check on you." Something in my chest went cold. My name is Renee Calloway. I'm 41. I work in medical billing. I own a small house in Columbus, Ohio, and I have learned the hard way that when someone who disappeared from your life suddenly reappears with a warm smile and easy words, they usually want something. I let him in, made coffee, sat across from him at my kitchen table. He asked about my job, my savings, whether I was still at the same bank. He kept it casual, wrapped inside small talk about weather and how the neighborhood looked nice. But I noticed the questions. I always notice the pattern underneath the conversation. I answered carefully, gave him just enough to seem open. He stayed about an hour, hugged me at the door, said we should do this more often. I watched his car pull away and stood there for a long moment. People don't show up after 4 years just to check on you. They show up because they need something, or because someone sent them. I just didn't know which one it was yet. I didn't sleep well that night. I kept replaying the conversation in my head. The way he asked about my bank, the way he slipped it in between asking about my job and whether I like my neighborhood. It didn't feel like catching up. Felt like a survey. "Here's what you need to understand about my father, Raymond. He left when I was 9. Not dramatically. No big fight, no scene. He just sort of faded out. Calls got shorter. Visits got further apart. Then one day there were no more visits and the calls stopped completely. My mom never badmouthed him. She just got quiet whenever his name came up. I grew up mostly with my mom, Carol. She remarried when I was 14. Her new husband, Gary, had a daughter from his first marriage. Her name was Tiffany. She was 2 years younger than me, and from day one, she was Carol's favorite. Not Gary's. Carol's. I noticed it, but I never made it a big deal. I built my own life, worked hard, saved money, bought my house at 36 without help from anyone. Carol and I had a decent relationship. Not close, but decent. We talked maybe twice a month. She knew about my savings account. I had mentioned it once when I was proud of hitting a certain number. I wish I hadn't. After my dad's visit, I called my mom just to chat. Normal conversation. But near the end, she asked, almost too casually, if I was still happy with my bank. 2 people, same question, same week. That's when I started paying closer attention. I logged into my bank account the next morning. Everything looked normal. Balance was where it should be. No strange transactions. I checked twice just to be sure, then closed the app and told myself I was being paranoid. But I couldn't shake it. I work in medical billing. My entire job is catching errors that other people miss. Small numbers that don't line up, charges that don't match records. I've been doing it for 15 years, and the one thing it taught me is this: when something feels off, it usually is. You just haven't found the proof yet. So I started paying attention differently. I noticed my mom was calling more than usual, 3 times that week. Each call friendly, warm, asking about my life in a way she hadn't in years. It would have felt nice if I hadn't already been watching. I also noticed she never asked about Tiffany. My mom talked about Tiffany constantly. Every conversation had some update. Tiffany's job, Tiffany's boyfriend, Tiffany's apartment. But suddenly Tiffany's name wasn't coming up at all. That silence was louder than anything she could have said. I didn't confront anyone. I didn't ask questions. I just watched and waited and kept logging into my account every single morning. Then on a Thursday, 2.5 weeks after my dad showed up on my porch, I opened the app before I even got out of bed. I sat up slowly. The balance on my screen was not my balance. It was almost completely empty. I just sat there staring at it, completely still. I didn't call the bank right away. I know that sounds strange, but I've learned that when something big happens, the first thing you do is breathe. Because the moment you react, you lose control. of the situation. I sat on the edge of my bed for about 10 minutes, just thinking. The account had been drained. Not partially. Not a few $100s. Almost everything. Over $19,000. Gone in what looked like 2 transfers. Both done 3 days apart. Both from the same external account I didn't recognize. Someone had linked an outside account to mine and pulled the money out slowly enough not to trigger an immediate fraud alert. That takes planning. I got dressed, drove to my bank in person, and sat down with a manager named Patricia. She pulled up the records. The transfers had been authorized using my online login credentials. Whoever did it had my username, my password, and had answered my security questions correctly. Patricia asked if I had shared my login with anyone. I hadn't. But someone close to me had access to enough personal information to guess those security answers. My mother's maiden name, the street I grew up on, my first pet. I drove straight to my mom's house. She opened the door and I could tell. Immediately she knew why I was there. Her face changed the second she saw mine. I didn't yell. I just asked her to sit down. And then I asked her directly if she had taken money from my account. She was quiet for a long moment. Then she said, yes. But she said it like she had a reason. She said Tiffany needed it. That was her opening line. Not sorry. Not I didn't know how else to help her. Just Tiffany needed it. Apparently Tiffany had been struggling, behind on rent for months. Her boyfriend had left. She had lost her job. My mom said she had been watching Tiffany fall apart and didn't know what to do. Then she said the part that took my breath away. She had used my money as a down payment on a house for Tiffany. $19,000. My $19,000. The money I had saved over years of careful budgeting and long hours and saying no to things I wanted. Gone. Put into a house with Tiffany's name on it. My mom looked at me and said she knew I was responsible. She knew I would be okay. She said she planned to pay it back. I looked at her for a long moment. Then I said, okay. I told her I needed some time to process it. I hugged her at the door. I drove home. And I called my lawyer. Not because I was angry. I was past angry. I was in a place that was quieter and colder than anger. I had been saved up for, counted on, and robbed by my own mother. And my father had been sent to case my life like I was a target. I needed to know exactly what I had before I made a single move. My lawyer picked up on the second ring. Told her everything. She was quiet for a second. Then she said, Renee, don't touch anything yet. I said, I know. My lawyer's name was Diane. She had handled a contract dispute for me 3 years earlier and I trusted her completely. She told me the first thing I needed was documentation. Everything. Bank records, transfer history, timestamps, the external account number that was used. She said we needed to build a clear picture before anything else happened. I spent the next 4 days doing exactly that. I went back to Patricia at the bank and requested a full paper trail. Every transaction, every login timestamp, the IP address attached to each access. Patricia was helpful and honestly seemed genuinely disturbed by what she was seeing. The IP addresses on the logins matched my mom's home internet provider. Diane said that was significant. Then I did something I hadn't planned on doing. I called my dad. Not to confront him. To listen. I kept the conversation light, casual. Just checking in like he had done with me. And within 10 minutes he mentioned Tiffany. Said he'd heard she was doing better, getting settled into a new place. He had no idea I hadn't been told that part yet. He slipped. I kept my voice completely even and said that was great to hear. After I hung up, I wrote down exactly what he said and the time he said it. Diane said my dad's involvement mattered because it showed coordination. This wasn't my mom acting alone in a moment of desperation. This was planned. My dad was sent to gather information. My mom used it. That changed the legal weight of everything. Diane said it was time to contact law enforcement. I said I was ready. Filing a police report felt strange. Sitting across from a detective and saying my mother stole from me was one of the hardest things I've ever done. Not because I doubted it. The evidence was clear. It was hard because some part of me had spent my whole life wanting her to just choose me. Just once. But I sat up straight and I told the truth. The detective assigned to my case was thorough. He reviewed the bank records, the IP logs, the transfer timeline. He noted my father's visit and the timing of it. Diane had prepared everything neatly and it showed. Within 2 weeks, my mother was formally contacted by law enforcement. She called me the same night, crying, saying she didn't think it would go this far, saying she never meant to hurt me, saying Tiffany didn't know where the money came from. I let her talk. Then I told her calmly that $19,000 doesn't accidentally move from one account to another, that someone had logged into my account using my personal information, that it happened more than once, and that I had the records to prove all of it. She went quiet. The case moved forward. Because the transfers crossed a certain dollar threshold, it was treated seriously. My mom was charged with felony theft by deception. My dad was brought in for questioning regarding his role in gathering my financial information. The house Tiffany was living in became part of the legal proceedings. None of it was loud or dramatic. It was just paperwork and truth. And the truth was heavy enough on its own. The case took about 8 months to resolve. My mom took a plea deal. She avoided prison time, but received 3 years of probation, mandatory restitution, and a felony record. The restitution meant I would be paid back in installments. It would take time, but the order was legally binding. My dad wasn't charged criminally. There wasn't quite enough to prove he knowingly participated in the theft, but he was named in the civil portion and that followed him. Tiffany lost the house. That part was hard to watch even through everything. She genuinely may not have known the full story of where that down payment came from, but the money was stolen and the law doesn't make exceptions for that. I didn't celebrate any of it. People sometimes expect that when justice happens you feel this big rush of satisfaction. I didn't. I felt tired mostly and sad in a way that's hard to explain. What I lost wasn't just money. I lost the version of my mother I had always hoped she might become someday. The one who would finally see me clearly, choose me fairly. That hope was gone now and no court order brings that back. What I kept was my clarity. I know who I am. I know what I built. I know I handled the hardest thing I've ever faced without losing my integrity or my composure. I still live in my house in Columbus. I still go to work every morning. I rebuilt my savings. Slowly and carefully the same way I built them the first time. Nobody can take that from me again. I made sure of it. Complete.